So now we're going to do the blacks, his tail, his body, etc. And the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to test how this is going to work for me. So I switched to a larger brush and I wanted to test my colors. Now, I would highly recommend. This is one of those multimedia pads, and I've showed you before that I do a lot of my practice in. And they come in handy. And it's nice that it's all together like this because you can save it and look back at your pieces or your painting practice. So let's get this going. Here I have my colors. This is the Prussian Blue. This is True Blue. These are all plaid folk art colors, and Licorice Black. So I'm going to first start. Because this is paper, I'm going to dip in my floating medium, and I'm going to get double load the brush with the two colors, black and the True Blue, and just to give it a test of how that's going to do for the feathers. And I start on the chisel edge. The chisel edge is this sharp edge. You see it's nice, make a thin line if I wanted to. And I'm trying to keep my hand out of the camera view. So when I start, usually I start out pointing up, but you can't see what I'm doing that way. So I'm going to put my a little bit to the side, and you pull it up on the chisel edge, you flatten it, you just press, 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 and then you pull it around, and I'm kind of twirling with my fingers as I go. Twirl, and like that. So I think that blue is probably pretty good, and as you go along, I just now dipped a little bit in the Prussian Blue just to give it a little different tone. And I'll do the same. Now actually, well, this will work. So I'm going to go up again and just practicing. And you notice how that Prussian Blue is much darker and it blended in more. Now, as it dries, you will be able to see it, but I like the contrast of the True Blue, I think, better. As I told you, as you brush, you're going to get more of that black, and it's going to obscure a lot of the blue, but the blue will come through. So no worries there. And we are going to, on our rooster, we are going to overlap, but I wanted you to see the motion of the stroke. Again, start on the chisel edge, up and down, and then you pull up and curve. Now I kept it more on the chisel edge there, and just pulled it around. And that made a narrower feather. So you can vary your feathers that way. And we're just, if you want to just go into, like pull in just a blue feather, tail feather, then I wiped out my brush. I did not wash it. I wiped it out and just go all True Blue. I didn't get that in the camera, I'm sorry. I did all True Blue, and then I dipped a little in the Prussian Blue. You notice that? And then you can just go over, and that really gives you some blue in there. But the black shows through. Okay, so that's our tail feathers practice. Go ahead and practice until you feel comfortable, and then we'll move on to our painting. Okay, so we're going to do his back feathers. And I still have the blue, the two blues on the brush. So I'm just going to dip the darker blue side into the black right now. I didn't clean my brush out. It just wasn't necessary. I got a little bit of blending or floating medium just to let it stroke smoothly. And I'm just going to follow along the outline. Do not try to perfectly fill it. That's just an exercise in futility. Now this time I went into the Prussian Blue and the True Blue. The Prussian Blue is pretty dark, so it's doing good in creating a dark area. And I'm making the same strokes, and you notice how the blend of colors is appearing Or at least I hope it is. Let me see if I could get better light. So, yes, I'm kind of going over that, but this will come on top of the black. We'll know where it's at because some of it will show through, I'm hoping. I'm hoping I don't obscure it completely, but same. Don't worry about ending directly where these end. It's just the impression and not the reality. So we need to keep going. I think these down here are the blue-black. And sometimes to fill in, you'll make a couple strokes. And you notice there's the striations of colors in that. Exactly what you want. So I'm going to go back. I just got the two blues on that one. And you can play around. You can do it in a different sequence. You can just make it your own. So I got a smidge. Oh, that's the blue. That's okay. I want that feather. I don't want them all to evenly line up. So I'm going to pull this feather a little bit further. And maybe the next one. Now I've been alternating between dipping the dark side in the Prussian blue and the licorice. And that gives me some of the striations of color. Okay, so I think that looks pretty good. That was looking empty in there. We'll give him a real tall tail. Alrighty, so there's a little bit, I'm looking at a picture that I have to kind of get the colorations correctly. So that underneath there has a touch of black or dark color. So we're going to let that dry. So let's go in here and we're going to start adding the feathers all in here. And getting those lined up. And we're going to do it the same way other than I'm just going to make chisel strokes. So you see how I'm doing this? And you're going to layer them. Just because as it dries, because we have the different colors in there, it's going to give it texture. And if you wanted to, you could just fill that body in and call it good. I just like to create a little bit of texture with my strokes. Chisel edge, again, I got a lot of paint in my brush. And you notice I went over the line over here, but it doesn't bother me because it's all good. We're going for an impression of a rooster, not reality. And this helps too. I just dipped in the black that time because I just had enough blue in here. Okay, so we're getting his feathers on. And that Prussian blue and the black is really putting in the color. If you want to add just a touch of brightness, turn your brush to where the lighter blue is dragging behind the black or the darker color. It's usually the trailing color that is the predominant color when you're doing this. Not always. I mean, sometimes because your brush can get muddy with paint colors, it can be obscured. Now, the wing is actually the same color, but we want to have it be a little bit darker, but not a lot. So I'm going to clean up my brush where I don't have the lighter blue. And I'm just going to use the black and the Prussian blue. And I'm going to work that into my brush. I got a little bit extra moisture in my brush. And that will create a little bit darker wing than the body. So it kind of stands out, as well as we can bring some highlights along the edge to differentiate the wing. Alrighty, now the very tips show black underneath. So depending on which way I want to go, sometimes I've been pulling the brush this way, sometimes this way. Like if I wanted a sharper feather, I pull the brush that way so it gets it. Some sharp tips. So there we have it. And you can definitely tell that the wing is darker than the body. Now, we may come in later, probably will, and create even more texture and color in the body to give it some depth. But for now, that's our blacks on our rooster. We've painted his tail. We have painted around the tail. Here's the tips. This part's golden here, so that we're going to leave that to show up later. Now, in my original practice piece, I had some teal or aqua in there to really brighten it up. Now, we may bring that in later and do a little bit of highlights with that color so that he really just sparks some joy. So I hope you enjoyed this little tidbit of this rooster painting tutorial in 10, 20, 30 minutes or less. And the next segment, we will come in, we'll touch up some of the goldens. We'll put in the goldens here and on the neck and probably put in another coat on the reds.